After the long night spent crossing the Delaware River into southern New Jersey, the Continental Army had a long, cold, 10-mile march ahead of them to try and surprise attack the Hessian soldiers stationed in Trenton, New Jersey. Cold, wet, and tired, the 2,400 Continental soldiers marched on to Trenton. They arrived just after sunrise and completely surprised the Hessians. In the end, the Continental Army captured and killed about 900 Hessians. Not only did they win, but also there were no casualties or wounded on the Continental Army side. This victory gave the Continental Army a much-needed morale boost and gained needed supplies. Following this battle, many of the men basically worshipped George Washington and would listen to anything he said. Following their victory at Trenton, the Continental Army began to win a few more battles. Late in 1777, the British Army forced the Continental Army into southern Pennsylvania. They were heading to their pre-arranged winter camp at Valley Forge. There, the Continental Congress had stored enough food and supplies to last the entire winter. Unfortunately for them, the British Army found out about this camp and raided all the supplies. So when the Continental Army arrived on December 19, 1777, there was barely anything left for them to use. Many of the men walked into camp with no shoes on their feet, some of them using cloth to insulate their feet from the cold, and most left bloody footprints leading into camp because of the cold. The winter at Valley Forge was one of the most trying times for the Continental Army. About a quarter of the men that arrived on December 19, 1777, would die because of cold, disease, or malnutrition. Some of them had even tried to run away, but were not successful, either having to turn around or ended up dying out in the wilderness. But many stayed because of their faith in George Washington, because George Washington himself stayed with the men and not in the huts built for the officers. These are the times that try men's souls. The summer soldier and sunshine patriot will, in this crisis, shrink from the service of their country, but he that stands it now deserves the love and thanks of man and woman. This quote by Thomas Paine describes the harsh conditions the men would go through, but also provided hope for what followed. Once the winter broke and spring arrived in 1778, the French army had decided to send help because of their Continental Army's triumph during the battles of Saratoga. Marquis de Lafayette arrived in Valley Forge to help train the Continental Army and turn them into a formidable fighting force. He described what he saw. The unfortunate soldiers were in want of everything. Their feet and legs froze till they grew black, and it was necessary to amputate them. The army frequently passed whole days without food. Lafayette was not the only officer to arrive and help. Baron von Steuben from Germany would also arrive and do the same thing.